Our next speaker is Mr. Stuart Palmer from Hasbara Coalition. Please take the floor.
Good afternoon, everybody. The organization Cohav incorporates a word which everybody agrees we shouldn't be using today, the Coalition of Hasbara Volunteers. But since it was incorporated in 2002, we didn't feel that we wanted to change the acronym, although we are now Public Diplomacy Volunteers. Way back in 2002, it was felt that there are all sorts of wonderful organizations, and three of them, you've heard their story today, but there's all sorts of other organizations all around the world, each doing their own thing, and very little which has anything to do with each other. If we look at the distribution of population around the world, we see that the top 25%, the decision makers, political activists and so on, are being handled by the government and many NGO organizations. But we have the 75%, the people at the bottom, the schools, the universities, the trade unions, the trade journals and so on, and these are being attacked by the media, by the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign and all its supporters, and this is the area where we're trying to focus on to establish groups around the world dealing with these sort of issues. Cohav, as an organization, maintains connection, no control, but maintains connection with resource groups and NGO groups, so it has information. With rapid response groups, groups in Ireland, in Melbourne, in Connecticut, and so on, dealing with issues in the local newspapers. And when we see the letters that they write, sometimes they're applicable to stories that are going on in another country, so we can pass them on. We have media activists, like, for instance, Joe, and to a large extent Michael as well. And then bloggers and social networking. The media today is providing a barrier. Somebody raised a question this morning, why aren't we getting good news stories into the newspapers? They are not interested. Israel 21C, another wonderful organization that managed a couple of years ago to get 4,000 stories into the American press, tried to break into the UK market and failed. So we have bloggers and social networking, which is helping to bypass this. I can just give one small example. I wrote a couple of weeks ago a blog about the 180,000 Palestinians that are treated in Israeli hospitals. I had 12 readers from Saudi Arabia that went in and read it. Don't know whether they understood my English, but they went in. And so you can never know who is actually going to read your material. And then we have a whole range of Christian organizations. One of our latest members, we have 110 members that we're in contact with. One of our latest one is down in New Zealand, Kiwi Friends of Israel, a Christian organization that feel they want to do something and they feel a little remote. And so these are the organizations we try and feed information across between organizations according to what's available. Often the information comes vertically to us, so we can pass it on. It can come from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Foreign Ministry's Office, the IDF, the GPO. The GPO puts out 4 times a week a wonderful summary of all the headlines from the international press, which I have a separate mailing list for, and people seem to appreciate it. Government departments such as water. If we feel that facts are not important to people, I have one example of a fellow I entered into communication with over the fact that he felt that we were stealing Palestinian water. Now, I have contact in the Water Commissioner's office and was giving him the facts from their report. After 3 rounds of emails, he said to me, Mr. Palmer, it's impossible to debate this subject with you further. You're always quoting me facts. And this, in fact, bears out what people have said already on the panel today. So there is the flow vertically and there is the flow horizontally. And we do reach all these different countries with different organizations that are operating, some more than one in each country. The facts of life are that unfortunately there is a predetermined agenda by many of the media and the press corps. Again, another story from the Lebanon war. I got a telephone call from our embassy in Ireland if I would receive a journalist who was paying for his own fare to come to Israel because he felt that what he was reading in the Irish newspapers just couldn't be true. And when he came to visit us, and we took him at grassroots level to meet people, real people, Israelis, who were under the bombardment of the Katyushas from Lebanon, he went back, and today he's writing very pro-Israel articles. He said to us, most of the journalists he met in the hotels in Haifa were sitting waiting for the stories to come to them. And I don't think this is an unusual feature. The printing of apologies in the press has little effect or no effect on the readers, even if they do publish an apology. The damage has already been done. There's very little censorship in the Israeli media. We are a country at war. In the Second World War, all the media in Britain were under censorship. And heaven forbid anybody that didn't print that was something that was for the state of Israel. I would suggest to you, we are in a state of war, albeit a psychological one, and some of our press is rather irresponsible. There's very little investigative journalism today in the field of instant news. People have got to get it out. It's got to be on the internet version within the next 5 minutes. They don't have time to check the facts. And so what action is required? Well, first of all, again, it's been mentioned this morning, we've got to develop some common messages. If we get caught up in the mantras of the Palestinians, we'll never win that argument. And so we've got to be utilising the same messages at all levels. More people on the ground have got to be available to give these messages, be it academics, business people, students, and so on. I spend most of my time going around army bases where they're inviting volunteers from overseas to work under the Sarel program. Almost without exception, everyone signs up to the email list, which is why I think I might have one or two more than Michael on my mailing list, and get information. And when they get back home, they often form their own rapid response groups to information in newspapers. A very successful one is in Ireland. The Irish Zionist Action Group, which is a bit of a misnomer because 75% of them are Catholic, will not let letters go by in the newspapers without a response. And that's done that day, so it goes in the next day, not waiting for information and sending it out a week later when it's not relevant. Similarly, in business people, I refer to hospitals. I've given a number of talks to hospitals where doctors and nurses are going overseas. People have to be prepared. We have to be more active encouraging media representatives by preparing a special program. And the one that I really feel very strongly we ought to be doing, in London particularly, there are millions of people stuck in the massive car park of the M25 who are listening to radio chat hosts. They ought to be here, not necessarily government sponsored, but meeting the people on the ground and getting the real stories, the real stories of the Israelis. Nearly finished. And a coordinated campaign throughout all public diplomacy groups to continue to name and shame, and where there is bad journalism, very much what Joe is doing. We all have a role to play in that. And I think that if we tackle that 75%, there's certainly a massive multiplying effect. And I just want to finish with one example that I have contact with the overseas program at Haifa University. And after an ulpan, a lady came to me and said, I'd like to talk to you. And she is a journalist for a Christian TV show. We ended up making 5 mini films about life in Haifa with Mandarin overtones on the wording. So you never know when opportunities like this can crop up if you have contact between yourselves. And I would hope that every one of you in this room, in some form or other, can do something. It's not enough to sit back and say somebody else has got to do it.
Thank you.